sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
Good afternoon, South Africalings. How are all of you doing out there today? It is a rather wet and dreary and dismal day in Johannesburg today. This is the Wayne G Show, and this is Real Talk Radio, where the talk is always real. Yeah, guys, today I'm going to talk a bit about Brackenfell. Yes, Brackenfell was back in the news again on Friday. Our Red Berets, the EFF ground troops as they call them, descended on Brackenfell. They disobeyed a court ruling that said that they can't congregate in more than 100 people, which is part of the state of emergency laws. And descended on Brackenfell to protest against racism, systemic racism. The agenda is about land. Land is a huge contentious issue in South Africa, and it is a massive political issue as well. So parties like the EFF are steadfast with their land agenda. They pretty much believe that all the land in South Africa should be returned to the government and then distributed evenly and equitably between the population to, in their words, rightfully give the land back to those who are disenfranchised by it. And to try and understand that a bit better, I think we've got to go way back in history, way back in time to 1910, when South Africa became a union. Thereafter, 1913, the Land Act was put into place. The Land Act was the first bit of real legislation into segregation, where the black population were literally forced to segregate from the white population, and they were put into certain areas, and they were only allowed to buy land or have land in those areas. And then there were white areas where white people were allowed to own land, and the Land Act was pretty hardcore, hey? Very wrong and totally racist. You know, when you start segregating people along racial lines, it is wrong, hey? And it just shows you what was going on 100 odd years ago, hey? And how far we've actually come since then. But yeah, it wasn't right. And what happened in that time, like I said, was 80% of the land were given to white people and 20% were given to black people, and it was totally skewed against the population. The Land Act and the subsequent anger about what that act caused going into the future is a contentious issue, and one that I think needs addressing, and we're trying to address it. The country is trying to address it, the government is trying to address it, but it's highly complicated. But yeah, the EFF have that at the top of the agenda, and they really are steadfast in pushing the land reform policy. They want quite an aggressive land policy. And yeah, so let's see what happens. Okay, so let's go back to Brackenfell. Back to Jack. Yes, Jack Markowitz. I'm sure you've seen him on social media and in the media. He was a young man that the media caught on to and the cameras caught on to, because he arrived at Brackenfell on Friday in a big red EFF puffer jacket. Yep, a little blonde white man in an EFF jacket is bound to cause a stir. And he got the media's attention. The media literally jumped on him because, you know, how could you not? He did not fit what you'd say the profile of an EFF member is. So yeah, the media were onto him, and he had quite a lot to say, old Jack. Jack loved the limelight, eh? It was like the Jack attack. But yeah, you know, he believed that white people or people in Brackenfell, you know, and across the whole country pretty much yearn. He used the word yearn for the days of apartheid. We miss the days of apartheid because that's when we ruled South Africa, and that's when we as white people could do whatever we wanted and take land and pretty much, rule under an iron law. And Jack believes that is completely wrong, and yep, I tend to agree with him on that one. Yeah, he believed that white people use WhatsApp groups in their neighborhoods. They use neighborhood watches and neighborhood security to uphold their idea of apartheid or the apartheid regime. Yeah, I don't tend to agree with him on that one. I think that, you know, the majority of neighborhoods are not only white anymore, first of all. And second of all, we use neighborhood watches and WhatsApp groups as security groups. Because guess what? Our neighborhoods are under attack from just general lawlessness that the police are not protecting us from. The police are like the mop-up squad in South Africa, you know. They arrive after the fact, but not in Brackenfell. On Friday, got to give it to them. On Friday, the cops were there and ready. They were ready for action at Brackenfell. But yeah, good old Jack, he believes that we use those neighborhood watches as a kind of, you know, protection against the black population, which is totally incorrect. We use it as a protection against crime. You know, he was also, when questioned by one of the journalists, they asked him about the Rainbow Nation, and he was very quick to jump to the conclusion that there is no such thing as a Rainbow Nation. The Rainbow Nation doesn't exist, and that Rainbow Nation that we talk about was sold out. In other words, in 1994, he mentioned 1994, I think quite long before he was even born. So the young man was talking about 1994 without pretty much knowing anything about it. But he came to the conclusion that when Mandela came into power, he didn't sort out the land problem, the land issue. He pretty much swept it under the table and sold Winnie out. And yeah, the country did not reform, and nothing was actually done about the land issue. So he believes that what they're doing now is they're trying to rectify the injustices of the past that the Mandela regime didn't fix. So yeah, that's his opinion. You know, Jack is there to support the EFF. He's there to give the EFF a mandate or support their mandate. And yeah, he believes that not only should the EFF be in Brackenfell, because in his words, Brackenfell is a poor area or a poor white area. He believes that the EFF should be going to Clifton. Yes, Clifton of all places. And yeah, good old Jack, you know, we don't know much about him, but what we do know is he's probably between the ages of about 18 and 21. We know that he comes from quite a wealthy family. His dad, Jack Markowitz, into property, into hotels. You know, he comes from a privileged background. So yeah, let's be the pot and call the kettle black. So yeah, this young man was pretty much, I'd say, virtue signaling. Virtue signaling is the way of the millennial. Generation Z are absolutely brilliant at virtue signaling. And yeah, Jack went on to talk about land and, you know, again, make the statement that the land must be returned to the rightful owners. The land must be given to the rightful owners who are, you know, disenfranchised black people that had their land taken away from them in 1910 and subsequently from the Lands Act, Group Areas Act, etc. Which again, I do say was wrong, but we need to somehow find a way to rectify it without destroying the country's productivity. Well, Jack is saying that we should do is pretty much take all the land, redistribute it amongst the rightful owners of the land, you know, and pretty much establish a socialist government. You know, the minute we talk about taking land away from people and putting it in the hands of either a government or a group of people, we start talking about, yes, communism, socialism, where the means of productivity are controlled by the people. I'm going to do a podcast on that soon, so I'm not going to get into too much, but yeah, what old Jack is talking about is pretty much socialism, and it is rising in popularity amongst a generation. And yeah, the ideology sounds sound, but once you put it into practice, as Maggie Thatcher said, eventually you run out of other people's money. And that's one of the best descriptions I've heard for socialism. But yeah, so Jack wants to institute that in South Africa, give the land back. And yes, we know how that all turned out. Hey, anyone who's read Animal Farm, we know how that all turns out. The pigs suddenly realized that they could garnish a lot more control on the other animals because they were brighter and understood more, and they started to use the system, the socialist system, to become corrupt, because that's the problem with socialism. It is easily corrupted, and humans, unfortunately, can be corrupted and are corrupt. So yes, Jack had a great idea in his mind. Let's take it all away and redistribute it. I'd love to know what his parents think about that. Hey, he had a lot to say about doing certain things and taking away from certain people, and he had a lot of opinions that I wonder, thinking about it, what his background was like. He must have had a privileged upbringing, and all of a sudden he's there fighting the fight with the EFF and getting a lot of praise from members of, I saw on Twitter there were a lot of people praising him, and I don't know exactly why they were praising him. First of all, why wasn't the young man at university? And second of all, why wasn't he working, or doesn't he have a job? And all these people that are there on a Friday in the middle of the day, are they not working? Don't they have something better to do? I don't know, guys. Hey, what happened in Brackenfell on Friday was pretty nuts, hey? And it was also pretty comical in a way. These EFF guys arrive there and they all boss barat and want to fight, and in their army or in their military platoons, as they call them, they love the military rhetoric and jargon. They love to use it, and their cadres, and there's so many memes out there at the moment. You must see it, like the before and after photos, where before everybody was militant and together, and the minute the cops started dispersing them because they had broken the 100 people gathering law, they ran away like scared people, or they ran away like frightened little children. after they threw some fireworks, they looked like frightened little kids running away from fireworks. And you know what? When their buddies went down, or when their buddies fell down, they didn't stop to pick them up. It was each man for themselves. Go and watch the footage. They talk about military, and in the military, when your man goes down, the first thing you're meant to do is help your brother. But not in this town, not the EFF. It was each man for himself. Guys were climbing on top of each other and running away from the blue water. I don't know why they put blue water in those cannons, but it was still pretty comical. So not all bad. Not all ended well in Brackenfell on that day, but at least, you know what, there weren't any major injuries. A couple of rubber bullets fired at people to disperse them, and no massive altercations between the residents of Brackenfell and the EFF. So at least they had no serious altercations. And I think the cops down there did a great job. I think they did a sterling job at keeping order. And here's to that. At least we had a day of order, and maybe the Cape Town Police Force should move up north and teach our cops up here how to handle crowds, or how to deal with an unruly mob. Because they sorted them out. It was absolutely brilliant. So that were the highlights of Friday. That were the highlights of the EFF's little trip down to Brackenfell. I don't think they'll be back there again soon. And a little chat about Jack. Awesome, guys. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Peace and love.